and welcome to WWE Questions You Want Answered. I'm Adam Wilborn from WhatCulture, joined by Adam Cleary and Adam Nicholas from WhatCulture. Answer all your questions about WWE. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling, wherever you get your podcasts from, for daily wrestling podcasts, where we review Raw, SmackDown, the Wednesday Night War between AEW and NXT. Pay-per-views, we have interviews, roundtable discussions, and a round of the week, complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on Wrestle Culture. As I said, they're joined by Adam Cleary and Adam Nicholas to answer all your WWE questions. We are live here on YouTube. Do let us know in the comment section any questions you want us to answer, but we should start with the headline question that gets us all started here, Adam Cleary. Which WWE star does Edge need to wrestle next? Now, the caveat for this is the fact he was recently on ESPN's Cheap Heat podcast talking about who he'd like to face, aside from, of course, Randy Orton once he recovers from injury. And he said he would love to face Ricochet. But who are you hoping for, Adam Cleary?
I'm delighted you've come to me first here, Adam Wilborn. Absolutely thrilled because, as you know, I have been pushing for a dream match in WWE for weeks, for months, for years now. And if I'm not going to be granted that, if Vince McMahon is not going to bestow upon me the money match to end all money matches, I think it works with Edge as well. So, if I can't have Ric Flair versus Brock Lesnar, I will take Edge versus Brock Lesnar. The problem is, Adam Wilborn, wrestling just doesn't feel real enough anymore. There aren't the stakes. You don't buy into these things. WWE is unable to make you invest in these matches. But you tell me that a man coming back after a 10-year absence with a surgically repaired neck, getting hoyed about, as you would say, Adam Nicholas, like an empty tracksuit, is not going to put bums on sofas, is not going to drive up network subscriptions, is not going to bring us all back to the product in a way they would be unable to do otherwise. Give me Lesnar versus Edge. Give me that edge of your seat stuff. Give me genuine panic that this man is going to be having Beth Phoenix open every single ketchup bottle he buys for the rest of his life. Give it to me now.
You're a sadist, Adam Cleary.
No, I'm not, mate. I know how to make money. That's all I...
Yeah, I suppose so. Your reaction to the thoughts on Ricochet versus Edge?
Not Brock, is it? So,
Adam Nicholas, you are a long-time fan of Edge, of course. It's such a shame that he's out with an injury at the moment. What do you reckon to him versus Ricochet, and who else would you like to see him face?
I think him against Ricochet kind of works, doesn't it? Because Edge has always said that when he's going to come back, he's not going to be the guy who does all these flippy things, and that's just not his style. Never has been. But Ricochet very much is that guy, and I'm sure he'd love to sell for Edge and do all the things that Edge will probably want him to do. I'd imagine Edge would need to be like the worst heel to get the best out of that, to really sort of punish Ricochet. But I think the guy who I imagine I would like to see Edge against the most, because I think there's enough story there, and it's not like a sort of wild card or anything, but Seth Rollins, because of all the stuff that happened with us two back in the day, when Rollins had his neck down, and obviously if he's coming back from shoulder surgery, he'd have obviously bicep, whatever it is, he'd have more of a target on his back, I think, and on his neck and head and every other part he's got going on him. And I'd quite like to see that if Seth indeed has carried on his momentum as this Messiah evil heel, I think it would work quite well.
Yeah, I really like that. I think that was the one I even pitched potentially as a match in the immediate aftermath of the Royal Rumble, because that was one of the things we were expecting to see before it all fell apart with Randy Orton, of course. Hi to Daz, 4785 in the comments, who says, give me Edge versus Matt Riddle, please. 2 out of 3 falls. Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think there's quite a lot of stars in the company.
Medicinal prescription on a pole match, is it?
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of stars in the company that you'd love to see go up against him. Luis Rios says Finn Balor, AJ Styles, Brock Lesnar. Yeah, Daniel Bryan is another one we would all love to see. And Adam Cole, I have no doubt, would work an excellent match. I think you could probably chuck almost anyone on the current roster in there with Edge, and they would have a spectacular match. But yeah, I feel like Ricochet deserves it. I haven't got around to watching that 365 yet, but I'm fascinated to see how they've edited that incredible year of Ricochets, if they're going from like April to April, which is presumably the moment it all fell apart after he stopped being in a tag team with Aleister Black, all the way through to him disappearing off TV immediately after forming the Two Fly crew with Cedric Alexander. And of course, that... how can I put this? Memorable match with Brock Lesnar. What was the tagline for that, Cleary? Why not me? Or something?
Why not me? was, well, anybody could beat Brock Lesnar. Like, upsets happen all the time. David and Goliath. I mean, we all read about that story, right? That happened. So why can't I, a professional wrestler, beat another professional wrestler? And if he'd won, if they'd used that to inform him winning and it being this unbelievable upset, then yeah, it's actually a pretty good way to market a match. But given that he got basically teabagged inside about 15 seconds, all it did was make him look like a loser in the build-up and then a loser in the match, which, if you add those two together, do you know what that comes out as?
What?
Just loser, mate.
I also like the fact that you were like, oh, we've all heard the story of David and Goliath. I don't think Vince has, because his weird story about eating mushrooms and stuff, he's never read that. He's never read a book in his life, has he?
No, I bet Vince McMahon does know the story of David and Goliath, but I bet it's genuinely like, we could do a David and Goliath story, except maybe have David win or something.
Let's get some questions from the comment section. Hello to Mr. Phoenix. Thank you for your donation. Cleary, rank these following things as horrible using of real tragedy to put something over. The Drake Maverick story, Heath Slater's appearance last night on Monday Night Raw, and Taz mocking WWE's slappy chap.
Okay, ranked from best to worst. Taz gets a free pass with me because nothing he said was remotely inaccurate. Heath Slater, if he wants to come back for a guest spot, come back from a guest spot. They did fire him. That's just how it was. And Drake Maverick, if those two are here, like, that's okay. That's there. Drake Maverick's out the window on Pilgrim Street Roundabout for me at the minute. I still think that's one of the most loathsome things. And every time I bring it up on NXT, by the way, somebody goes, Adam, no. They actually fired him for real, but when they saw the social media reaction, Triple H, he explained it all. They brought him back because they saw how much people loved him. And I'm like, all right, yep, thanks, cool. Well, I'm glad Triple H said that. That's cleared that all up. Because otherwise, it would be loathsome business practices. But we just didn't understand, you see. It was actually real. And what happened was they saw, I mean, you couldn't move on a Thursday, could you? Going on social media. Nobody was even talking about AEW. There was just this outpouring of love for Drake Maverick for having a 4-minute tournament match every single. You couldn't move for it. So it made sense that they got him back in as a result of that.
Also, just to subscribe to that point of view, if that's the case, everyone else who got fired could have been rehired if they'd have been asked. Like,
almost like, why fire anyone in that case?
Indeed. Hello to Bobby AJ. Now, I do realize this is called WWE Questions You Want to Answer, but it's a good question. He's donated, so I'm going to ask it anyway to you, Adam Nicholas. What promotion do you think AEW should have a working relationship with? I think Impact would be a better option than Ring of Honor because Impact has more exposure, and personally, I think they have a better roster. What do you reckon? ROH, Impact, New Japan, who'd be best for AEW?
WWE. 100%. No, obviously, that's never, ever going to happen. But I would really like to see them kind of extend the flirtations they've had with New Japan. I think that's where most people would imagine that should work because Moxie was such a sensation over there and that really worked going in one direction. So to see it go in the other way, can you imagine how excited someone like Michael Sidgwick would be if they could get someone like Okada guest starring on an episode of AEW or even Naito or whoever you'd want? Literally, pick whoever you want. They could fit into that so well. And they've got previous doing that with other companies, obviously. They've done that with Ring of Honor in the past, New Japan, that is. That would be my personal choice because, I mean, the matchups you could get from that would be absolutely mouthwatering, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's surreal to think that these companies are being so stubborn. I sense that potential relationships with like Ring of Honor Impact, especially considering the ongoing global bastard, may well be more feasible once we get rid of this horrendous problem circulating around the wrestling industry right now. One of many. Let's move on.
Sorry, the correct answer there was Defiant.
Yeah. Represent. Hang on, can you see that? There we go. Still repping the merch.
Vintage that now, isn't it?
Indeed. Fragility says, "Hey Adam." Either of you can tackle
That's
this.
me. I think that's me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, actually, this is good because this is slightly related to NXT. Hey, Adam, what do you think about the Great American Bash versus Fyter Fest Night 2? Who will win the ratings and who will have the overall better show? Another win for NXT last week, Adam Cleary. Another defeat for you over Simon Miller, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm actually quite surprised to hear the Fyter Fest Night 2 is going ahead because obviously with the ratings going the way they were, I assumed that they were just bin the whole thing off. Obviously, this terrible AEW experiment that's just provided distraction after distraction and eaten in to our man hours here at WhatCulture has obviously been a complete failure. But I don't know. I don't know. I hate going down the whole who's gonna win because like last week wrestling won. Fyter Fest was brilliant and NXT was absolutely brilliant. And I know these are one-off events and they're kind of built to with sort of like quasi mini B-show pay-per-views, given that they're on the regular TV broadcast. But I don't know. They're just really good. And I know they can't do stuff like this every single week. But if this is the quality of wrestling you can get on television midweek, then there is no real competition to be had. Just watch one live, then watch one after. Like it's a no-lose scenario, really.
Sidgwick obviously was talking about the fact that WWE have just sort of thrown together this Great American Bash pay-per-view and chucked, Bailey and Sasha on there.
Not long-form Jermaine pro wrestling storytelling.
Indeed. But the fact that, you chuck Sasha versus Io Shirai on there, you're going to do a rating, obviously. And Daz4785 in the comments says, Bailey, Sasha and Asuka are making this era watchable. They certainly are. Really enjoyed everything they did, along with Kairi Sane on last night's Monday Night Raw. But you sense, Nicholas, that this week Fyter Fest may well have the edge, despite the fact they've lost their World Championship match, of course. You've got Orange Cassidy versus Chris Jericho, which is being heavily promoted for obvious reasons. And NXT, whilst there is, a street fight on there and some random 3-on-3 matches that just kind of got thrown together last week, it's kind of a one-match show, isn't it? It's the winner-takes-all Keith Lee, Adam Cole match.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. They did stack that first day, the first part of Great American Bash so heavily, and it was fantastic. It was all the better for it. But I think the one thing that's proven is that, yes, I do see the argument about, we like long-term storytelling. I like it as much as the next person. But if you're going to throw a match together with Sasha Banks and Io Shirai, I don't need that to be a long build because that's just going to be amazing. And the ratings that pulled in was great. In terms of this week, yes, you'd say there probably are just the one match is the focal point of it. But then we've also had the potential spoiler of said match. I won't dive into that if someone hasn't seen it already. But that if that is indeed not, or ends up not being the result, fine. But if it is the result, then I guess that's your one shot. Will that sort of detract a lot of people from going to watch that episode of NXT? That'll be interesting. I think we can all agree this week's episode is not going to be, or certainly hasn't been booked as strong, shall we say, as the previous one.
Bobby AJ, in our response to his question, says, my fear with the AEW and a New Japan relationship is AEW may rely too much on New Japan talent like Ring of Honor have done, and that's why Ring of Honor has attendance issues. Yeah, they're only just really recovering from basically losing. Well, they had that amazing show, obviously, in MSG around WrestleMania 35. And then, it felt like everything either went to New Japan or to AEW, and Ring of Honor were kind of left picking up the pieces. Gary Blackwood, his question for you, Adam Cleary, says, do you think this would be a great point for WWE to bring back unique pay-per-view Titantrons, change the look of their shows, etc.? Hashtag bring back the fist. We talk about this a lot, but just to give a little bit of an edge, considering we're staring at the same thing week after week, Cleary.
I don't think that now is a good time to bring it back. I think any time is a good time to bring that back. WWE, you can imagine being in that meeting where some executive had a galaxy-brained moment of just making everything LED screens so you can change the look and the color. And you can imagine the pictures for it and the visualization and the concept art showing that all of these shows were going to look incredibly different until literally the second or third show when everything just started to look incredibly samey. Like, I grew up with the swinging backlash claws and the Armageddon sets that were all these cars and stuff. And just, wrestling shows should look unique and they should look different and there should be a vibe and a visual aesthetic to the whole thing because it should try to lean into the whole vibe they're trying to give the show with the matches and the stories and whatnot. But of course, WWE kind of abandoned that whole idea of building these interesting narratives and these long-term stories. So it does kind of fit this whole identicate, anybody can do anything because any Tron can be any screen and any pay-per-view can be any color. Like, it does kind of fit, but they have more money than God. So I'd like to spend it on that. Knowing
WWE's track record, Adam Nicholas, they will do this, but just for the horror show at Extreme Rules.
Just for the horror show, because that's what we all wanted, obviously. Never mind the SmackDown fist or the backlash swinging side things. We just want the horror show and some weird stuff like that. I have to say, though, as you know, especially you two, more so than myself, imagine how much simpler it is probably for them to just take the set that they have that has like the screen that obviously they can turn into literally anything. You can see why they've done it from a practical perspective, but as the fans who want to see it, this is a company who've been doing this for years, who have one of the best teams for setting this stuff up. You'd hope that they could be like, well, we'll just bring a few extra bits and not just go, hey, it's the Great American Bash. Let's get a flag and slap a little label on it. That's what we'll do for that. And then what else is American? Cars. That'll do. 2 cars there, please. Both American cars. I guess what they might as well have done, they should have just wheeled out.
Nicholas,
go on then.
You say that. I did ups and downs, and I was like, "Oh, it's great! They've put some balloons up, and they've got these 2 American muscle cars." Loads of people in the comments were like, "Those aren't even American cars."
Oh God, they weren't even American muscle cars.
America.
They were just
one of them's like an American make that now is built overseas, and the other's just a foreign car. Apparently, so it's just whatever was in the parking lot.
Like, imagine this: like they come over to the UK, and they might as well for the show, the Great American Bash. They might as well have just wheeled out the telephone box and the black cab that they bring for the UK shows, and just put some American flags and stuff on them. It would have been just as good, and I would have found that more entertaining, I think, than the level of effort that went in. Hey, some cars.
I think we take it all just for a giant pumpkin and Halloween Havoc, to be perfectly honest.
Fair.
Yes, give me Shinsuke Nakamura in an orange costume coming out of a giant pumpkin.
Oh,
I'll forgive everything else for the rest of the year.
I wanted to speak to you, Adam Nicholas, about something we've actually talked quite a lot about recently, being Shayna Baszler, with today's news about it officially being confirmed that she was supposed to win the Raw Women's Championship at WrestleMania. And Vince just decided he didn't want that to happen because he's not a fan of hers for whatever reason. So I thought we'd have a little bit of fun and talk about what is Vince McMahon's worst decision ever, because to me it is, I nearly had a breakdown on the news, it is mind-blowing that you wouldn't put the title on Shayna, in particular if you know that Becky Lynch is leaving because she's pregnant.
Yeah, I mean, that it really, like, WWE have missed the mark with quite a lot of things, haven't they? Let's be honest. There's a lot of stuff they should have nailed and they didn't, but ultimately something like that felt like almost a guarantee. It felt like it made sense. It felt like Triple H has probably backed Shayna Baszler to the hilt. She was ready. She's been presented as a killer, despite the fact he gave her Dracula fangs pretty much at the first hurdle. She managed to get past all that. And then they get to Mania, and as I think was the comment that he didn't think the live crowd would react to the title change. Obviously, because it wasn't there. But then obviously got the belt switched for both of the male performers, which was really, it just doesn't fit. He obviously just doesn't like Shayna Baszler. He's not into her for whatever reason. Well, was it because the crowd were booing her at Elimination Chamber that time? Maybe, but ultimately that's her job. So, like, whether they were booing her bored or not, like, this woman is fantastic at wrestling. She's got a great character. She can do it all. You just need to go and watch NXT to prove that, which obviously Vince has never watched an episode in his life. So that's probably half the problem that we've got there. I mean, how are you getting it so wrong? How do you get Shayna Baszler so wrong across the board? For me, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, the whole fact of like, oh, without a live crowd, then we shouldn't switch a title is insane. But good news, everyone. Apparently, she was filming stuff for Main Event over the past few weeks. So,
I mean, Main Event, come on. Like, Shayna Baszler shouldn't be sat on Main Event. She should be main eventing just on actual pay-per-views and on Monday Night Raw or wherever the hell they want her.
Good news, Shayna. You're on Main Event. I'm in the Main Event. No, you're on Main Event. You're fighting, I don't know, Natalia on Main Event or whatever. So, Nicholas, very quickly, what do you think is his worst decision ever? Because that's got to be right up there for me.
There's a lot of things I could choose here. I'm gonna use 2. I'm gonna sneak 2 in there if that's all right. One, because I'll get bollocked if I don't mention it. I think, like, from a selfish perspective, letting Bret Hart go to WCW would have been like, because you could have had such an alternate universe where Bret stays and gets to wrestle with all these amazing performers who were coming through. That would have been great. And it would have been a nice thing for old people like Michael Hamflett to have. But the thing that I really would have liked to have seen, and I think if it was done properly, it could have just been amazing. How excited we all were when we knew, like, the Bullet Club were coming to WWE. We had, like, all the pieces were there. You had Finn, you had AJ, you had Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, even to the point, I guess, I know he ended up in Undisputed, but Adam Cole was, like, turning up as well. And it was all falling into position. People got excited. Yes, they flubbed it so many times that by the end nobody gave a monkeys, but surely that was money. They could have had that run like absolute roughshod across the rosters, top to bottom. They could have had feuds with the Shield while they were still there. They could have had feuds with the New Day. Everybody, top to bottom, and I just feel like they didn't pull that trigger, and they really should have, because it's the Bullet Club, eh? Look at that. Bit of a pun for you.
Nice. Yeah, inexplicable, those decisions. Cleary, worst Vince McMahon decisions?
Like, how long have you got? Like, oh, God, right. The first time he tried to do the XFL, that was a terrible idea. The second time he tried to do the XFL, that was a bad idea. The World Bodybuilding Federation, that was a bad idea. Christ, $1 Million Mania, you know, we did the call-in to try to win $1 million. That was terrible. Nicholas said letting Bret Hart go to WCW. Hall and Nash going was probably just as bad as that. The illegitimate son angle turning out to be Hornswoggle after weeks and months of interest in that. Brawl for All, that was really everything about the invasion storyline, rushing forward with it when they couldn't get any of the big contracts, instead of just waiting a year, making the whole thing just another McMahon drama, making the whole thing just another Rock versus Austin drama. The limo blowing up, like, it's just Katie Vick, that's one of the worst decisions he's ever made in his life. I don't know. I don't know what Vince McMahon's worst decision ever is, but I'd like to think that one day the real bad ones will come out. The real bad ones. You know the ones. I'd like to think that we don't know what Vince McMahon's worst ever decision was yet.
Yeah, I think I was wincing at every single one you mentioned there. And I was like, oh yeah, that was awful. Yeah, I sense this is a list that can go on and on. So I'm going to move on quickly and then answer a question from Daz.
Oh, wait, no, I've got it. Vince's worst ever decision was running into the ring at the 2005 Royal Rumble instead of just calmly getting on the apron.
Let's be honest, though, that did end up being a great decision for everybody else, because we got to see that, and you'll always get the living moment of him doing both of his quads, but then somehow sitting there not looking like he's in pain. So I kind of feel like I might let him have that one, you know?
Looking like a really cross toddler sat on the floor.
I also don't. I like the story. I don't know whether it's true or not. I've read so many different accounts of it where he didn't actually tear both quads. He tore one quad and then was so like, I'm fine. Walking to the back, he tore his other quad back up the ramp. So then he was just like, right, I can't walk now. So I don't know. Ridiculous. Take your pick from that. Das4785, which you said, would you like to see more realistic moves in matches to make it look more effective? A la Asuka's spinning back fist to Bayley. It looked like really, that was harsh last night on Monday Night Raw. Cleary, do you reckon we'll see more of that sort of thing, either intentionally or unintentionally?
Actually, that's another thing that could go down as Vince McMahon's worst decision. Apparently, he could have bought the UFC at an early point of its development and thought there was no real interest in shoot style stuff like this and actual combat sports, so it didn't bother. But I think with the continued success of WWE, because for all we sit here and go, isn't it stupid they can't book anything, the company has been astoundingly financially successful over the past 10 or so years, and indeed UFC has blossomed into this sporting monolith over that same amount of time. Both like to take pages from each other's book. Like, UFC really exploded into the mainstream once all of their competitors started pretending they were pro wrestlers. And, you know, WWE's seen a lot of success by bringing stars over from there and letting them use more shoot style wrestling styles effectively. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to see more realistic looking stuff end up in WWE. No, not at all. And if you're wondering why I can't look at the camera while I'm saying this, it's because I'm trying to keep the mental image of Asuka hitting Bayley like that out of my head. So...
I think you may see more of that, although one of the reasons why Vince doesn't like Shayna is her MMA sort of styling, so who knows. But you don't need to sell myself and Adam Nicholas on the UFC, what with 251 coming this weekend and Jorge Masvidal baptizing Kamaru Usman potentially. Related to that, Laura Krolikowski, what's that? I can't see.
Hang on.
Fake hand. Thanks for that. Yeah, good stuff. Laura Krolikowski. Apologies for butchering your surname there, Laura. Says, do you think if Ronda Rousey stayed in the WWE, it would have helped Shayna's push, Adam Nicholas?
Repeat the question.
It had Ronda Rousey stayed in the WWE, would Shayna have benefited from that, do you reckon, Shayna Baszler?
It's hard to say, isn't it? Because on one hand, everybody's going to tell you, well, they could have just started to soldier on with the four horsewoman thing, assuming obviously things have been slightly different along the road. But ultimately, I think they would have probably ended up just sacrificing Shayna to Ronda. I think that would have gone down that road if they weren't indeed going to pull a four horsewoman trick, which would have been maybe worse, because I guess Vince sees Ronda as a star, and rightly so. She came to WWE and had a fantastic debut, yeah. But you've got potential in Shayna to do something very similar. Yes, she might not be the world-renowned name that Ronda Rousey is, but ultimately she's got the potential to be just as much of a badass. He doesn't see it, doesn't fancy it, and I don't know if he already doesn't fancy that. Imagine how much less he'd fancy it if he had Ronda Rousey there standing next to her and taking the spotlight away from her. Do you know what I mean? I'm not sure it would have helped, unless she went to the bat for her backstage with Vince. But even then, I mean, bigger and more scarier. People have tried and failed.
We mentioned some of Vince's terrible decisions. Everyone in the comments going wild for this. Gary Blackwood says buying ECW and WCW when and the way that he did. Red Lantern 161 just says most of his jacked up decisions this year. The lame computer as the Raw GM. Yes, and then the revelation that was friend of the channel, Hornswoggle, at the end of all that for no apparent reason. Let's conclude here by talking about the new United States Championship. Adam Cleary, your thoughts? You're shaking your head when you first saw it.
It's going to expose the business, this, because historically, if you get hit in the head with a championship belt, and let's face it, WWE loves a non-finish these days. They love a bit of shenanigans. A lot of people are going to get hit in the face with that United States Championship belt at some point. It's sort of considered like a steel chair thwack or the garbage can lid thwack. It's a nice flat piece of metal that's like, oh, I'm dazed. I must fall over now and close my eyes. Whereas this, if you look at it, all the embossing of the letters, all the little raised details, it's now incredibly jagged and incredibly pointy. So if somebody gets hit in the moy with that and isn't like bleeding like the proverbial stuffed pig, it's not going to look quite right. Also, that eagle is so garish. I actually quite dig it. It's like somebody screamed the word America into a 3D printer.
Yeah, I saw it initially and went, ugh, and then I saw photos of it. It seems to look better close up than it does further away. Adam Nicholas, you are arguably the most stylish person at WhatCulture. We have to know your thoughts on this.
Not for me, Jeff. Not for me.
Clear his face when I said that.
Sorry. Who won best dressed at the Tonys?
Well, let's just see what t-shirt you're wearing.
I'm sorry. Who won it first? Just out of curiosity, was it? Oh, it was me. That's fair.
Cleary, what t-shirt are you wearing right now?
Shah Gaspar t-shirt.
Look at that, represent. Nicholas, though, what do you make of the new United States Championship?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan, to be honest. It's not exactly a hot take, because I think from what I've seen, the internet reacted in a very specific way. I don't understand why the word champion is so big on it. Like, it's huge. It's massive. The belt is essentially the kind of belt that you would, I guess they're wanting to sell it to the kids, aren't they? So they need to know what champion is. So they'll never forget that when it's there. And I look forward to people, as Cleary mentioned, anybody who does get hit by this belt, having like the word ham across their forehead for like the foreseeable future or whatever it might be. That'll be quite interesting. But the belt, I don't know. I'm a sucker for just like was it Sean Rossap who tweeted about it looking prestigious and all that kind of thing? Or that was the gist, I think it was. He was saying.
Yeah, we did the news story yesterday saying it was going to look. What was the words we had for it? Classy and
prestigious, I think it was.
Well, we look like mugs now, don't we?
Well, that's the thing. I'm anticipating.
We look worse than that bloody belt does.
I'm expecting it to look something a la the big gold belt, something like prestigious and nice looking, and it's not that for me. It's very modern. It's very over the top, and I don't understand how so many companies have these belts that just look so utterly, ridiculously, like comically modern, and not just with a bit of tradition to them. I don't know. Not for me. I should have just stuck with that, really.
The vote on my Twitter says 56% think it's class, 44% think it's ass. Cleary, you're involved in Defiant and WCPW. How much thought and process goes into making a title belt?
I thought you were going to say you were involved in WCPW and Defiant. Just how heavy are these big stones you're going to be throwing at your own back? And I would have smacked you back down there because every single belt we had in that promotion was absolutely gorgeous. I don't know precisely how much work or effort goes in to creating a championship belt. You'd have to ask the people who design them, but I can say you have to be very careful to check that when you are a YouTube channel having a wrestling belt made, that the people making the wrestling belt know that it is for a wrestler and not for some scrawny white dude who is on a YouTube channel. Otherwise, what happens is you end up giving your championship belt to Killian Dane and it looking like a wristwatch.
Let's conclude here with our best and worst championship belts. Cleary, why don't you start us off?
The Intercontinental Championship from Turn O the Millennium. That was my favorite. I loved it. Also, that WWF Championship around the same time, which had the big eagle on it and the globe. It had just the small WWF logo. That to me, I think was my favorite World Championship. And that's not just me like romanticizing it because it was the Attitude Era and everything was great, because I thought the tag team belts were boring then. I thought the Hardcore Championship was horrendously bad. The European Championship did nothing for me, but the Intercontinental title and the World title I thought were lovely.
And least favorite?
That first attempt they did at just having the WWE logo as the belt, where it was still the slightly jagged logo. That is the worst one by a mile.
Nicholas?
Worst one or best one? I'll tell you what, I'll go with worst first. I don't know why I said that, because I had two ready for best. It's this trying to click things. I'm having to do all the tech on this side. The worst one, do you know what it is? It's going to be controversial. I really, really, really don't like the women's tag belts. Like, I love what they stand for now. I like them a lot more now because I feel like they've been on some good tag teams. And I think that's changed my perception of them. But when I first saw those belts, man, I just hated them. I hated them so much. I think it's lessened. I do think it's lessened. And I'm not a fan of that. To be honest, that current one that they've just brought off the US Championship isn't great. I just feel like there's this weird obsession with making them really modern and really like, I guess, so the kids will buy them. So that's fine, great. But for these people like us who shouldn't be watching at this age, apparently, I'm not happy, not satisfied with these belts. In terms of my favourites, though, I think I'm always a sucker for the top belt in New Japan. I think that's just like, it's beautiful, and they give it such a great sort of history to go with it. So it's prestigious. You only get that belt if you're the top boy, and it looks lush. But I also really, really love the Open the Dream Cage Championship. I
was thinking of that.
It's just lush. That I know it's daft, but the little gate with the key on it, on like the little lock bit, is just beautiful. And seeing that around Pac's shoulder for a while was just, I don't know, it was just perfect. It was orgasmic, some might even call it.
Indeed, yeah. I was trying to think of what that one was called for a second, then I was like, wait, it's the one with which you can open. There's the clue.
The gate to all of your dreams.
We have to mention the Divas Championship. It was absolutely horrendous. It's easily the worst championship for me, and I'm not exactly the biggest fan of the what was the Jam Belt, as you alluded to, Cleary, or the 24/7 Championship. Basically, a title's going to be bad if they wheel out Mick Foley to reveal it, basically. And favourite belts? I quite like the spinner belt, the WWE Championship spinner belt.
Of course you do.
Because it boiled so much piss at the time of just, youths! What have these youths done with this prestigious championship? But also, to completely counter that, the big gold belt, the World Heavyweight Championship, when Batista had it, I thought it screamed prestigious.
I tell you what's great about that spinner belt is that I remember watching the Edge documentary, and he talks about having it. And now, everything he'd want to tell you was that he doesn't like the idea of it because he's above the spinning thing and it's for kids, yada, yada, yada. But there's a great little bit on that documentary where Lita kind of talks about it and she says he really loved that belt, Like, he loved spinning the little, when it was the rated R and they swapped it around. She was like, he loves spinning that little R. Like, don't listen to what he says. He absolutely loves it. And I just think that's so funny because that would sum it up for me perfectly. I hated it. But imagine if someone then put your logo and stuff on it, you'd be like, go on, then I'm into this.
Very quickly to conclude, I want to give a shout out to Pranav in the comments, who says, I kind of liked Daniel Bryan's Eco Warrior belt. Yeah, we should give a nod to that. Really like that. I was campaigning for him to win Money in the Bank just so he could have like a cardboard briefcase as well. So there you go.
It was the tote bag. He would have had the tote bag, wouldn't he? That's what he should have had.
Yes, exactly. So there we have it. Best and worst championship belts. Let us know your thoughts on that and everything we've discussed today in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to What Culture Wrestling wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts too. Plus, you can let us know your thoughts on everything we've discussed and your Twitter questions for the news in the morning on Twitter at WhatCulture WWE. Watch there. Follow all three of us. You can follow Adam Cleary at
Adam Cleary, Clery.
You can follow Adam Nicholas at
It's Adam Nicholas.
You can follow me at Adam Wilborn. Get involved in the ass versus class vote over there right now. At What Culture WWE for all of us, of course. Thank you to everyone who's joined us today. Thank you for your donations, for your questions. My thanks to Adam Cleary and to Adam Nicholas. And we will see you soon.